Here's something most people haven't noticed yet. The United Nations just did something it's never done before. On July 6, 2026, it launched the Global Dialogue on AI Governance. And for the first time in history, there's now a permanent United Nations body dedicated entirely to figuring out how the world should handle artificial intelligence. Why does that matter? Well, right now, AI companies are spending more money than ever building increasingly powerful models. But there's a problem. These models are getting better faster than safety rules can keep up. Without some kind of international agreement on how to build and deploy AI safely and transparently, we are heading into a future where every nation is making up its own rules. That creates chaos. It means the safest AI models might get blocked from some countries. Less safe ones might proliferate in others, and nobody really knows what's happening in the lab next door. The gap between AI capability and AI safeguards just keeps widening. For anyone building AI or using it at work, the United Nations dialogue signals that binding international regulation is moving from that might happen someday to this is actually happening right now. And that changes everything about how the industry develops in the next few years. To understand why this moment matters, let's look at the history. Artificial intelligence has been advancing at a breakneck pace for the last few years. ChatGPT launched in late 2022, and suddenly everyone wanted to build with it. Then we got GPT-4, Claude, Llama, and dozens of other powerful models. Each one sparked new possibilities and new concerns. Companies were racing to build bigger and more capable models faster than ever, and governments started realizing they had almost no tools to regulate it. At the same time, the relationship between AI-capable nations started getting tense. Some countries worried that exporting their best AI models would give rivals an unfair advantage, so they started putting restrictions on what could cross borders. Other countries felt left behind. Meanwhile, AI safety researchers kept warning that without coordinated global standards, we'd end up in a race-to-the-bottom scenario where every nation builds whatever it wants with no shared safeguards. That's the background noise that's been building for years. So the United Nations decided to step in and create a forum where nations could actually sit down and talk about this. Not fight about it, just hash out what reasonable international standards might look like. That's the Global Dialogue on AI Governance that opened in Geneva on July 6th. So what actually is this Global Dialogue on AI Governance? It's a standing body, meaning it's permanent, not a one-off conference that ends and everyone forgets about it. It was created under a General Assembly resolution, so it has official backing. Think of it like the United Nations' nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, but for AI instead of atoms. What the dialogue is supposed to do is hammer out shared international rules for developing and deploying artificial intelligence. That sounds simple, but it's actually incredibly complex. Every country has different priorities. Some worry most about AI safety and preventing misuse. Others are focused on making sure they are not left behind technologically. Still others are concerned about preserving sovereignty and not having global bodies dictate what happens inside their borders. The dialogue's job is to find a way to coordinate on issues where there's common ground, things like transparency standards, safety testing requirements, and how to handle models that could be misused. Right now, there's no agreed-upon way to verify that an AI model is safe before it's deployed. There's no global standard for what information companies need to disclose. There's no coordination on which models can be exported between countries. All of that is in play. And here's where it gets interesting. So what does this actually mean in practice? If you're an AI researcher at Google or Microsoft or Anthropic, this dialogue could shape what you're allowed to do with your models. Right now, if you want to share a powerful AI model with the world, there's no international agreement on what testing you need to do first. That could change. The dialogue might establish minimum safety standards, like you have to run these specific tests and document the results before a model is considered safe to release. If you're a startup building tools on top of larger models, you might eventually need to comply with transparency requirements. That could mean you need to disclose how your system makes decisions, what data it was trained on, and what it's designed to do. It's similar to how pharmaceutical companies need to disclose drug ingredients and testing results before they can sell medicine. For governments, The dialogue opens up possibilities for coordinating on how they regulate AI companies in their territories. One country doesn't want powerful models exported without permission. Another country wants the freedom to access any AI tool. The dialogue is where those countries try to find middle ground. But here's what the headlines aren't telling you. The challenge with regulating AI globally is that it's way harder than regulating other industries. When the world wanted to coordinate on nuclear weapons, there was a clear focal point: you can't build them in secret. When regulators wanted to tackle climate change, there was scientific consensus on the problem. But AI regulation is messy because every country disagrees on what the actual risk is and what should be regulated. The European Union has already moved ahead with its AI Act, which is one of the strictest regulatory frameworks in the world. It requires companies to do risk assessments, document their systems, and meet specific safety standards before deploying AI. The United States has taken a lighter-touch approach, more focused on existing laws around privacy and discrimination rather than AI-specific rules. China has focused on content moderation and preventing unauthorized access to models. So you've got three major tech regions doing things completely differently. The United Nations dialogue doesn't replace any of these. It's not going to override the European Union AI Act or reverse the United States approach. What it's trying to do is find common ground on minimum standards that everyone can agree to, things that cut across borders. That's actually much harder, which is why this is historic. So why does this actually matter? Because we're living through a moment where AI companies are spending unprecedented amounts of money building increasingly powerful models. Right now, there's essentially a race happening. Whoever builds the most capable model first wins massive market share and gets to shape how people use AI. In that race-to-the-bottom environment, companies are incentivized to move fast and not worry too much about whether every safety box is checked. But AI systems that get things wrong can have real consequences. A misaligned AI chatbot could spread misinformation at scale. An AI system making loan decisions could discriminate against entire groups of people. An AI model designed for weapon targeting could be misused. Without some kind of agreed-upon verification that these systems have been tested and vetted, we end up in a wild west where there's no accountability and no standards. The United Nations dialogue is basically saying, hold on, before this gets worse, let's at least agree on some minimum guardrails that everyone follows. Things like testing requirements for safety issues before release, documentation on what the system can and can't do, and potential approval processes for particularly powerful models. That's a massive change from how things are right now. This is what changes everything. If you're building AI, here's what you need to watch for coming out of this dialogue. First, transparency standards will almost certainly become more strict. That means you'll probably need to document your training data, your testing results, and what your system can do. Get ahead of that now, start tracking this information, even if you don't have to yet. Second, safety testing is going to be expected. When you're training a large model, you're going to need to run specific benchmarks to check for bias, toxicity, jailbreaking vulnerabilities, and misuse potential. Have a security team review your systems before launch. Third, model licensing is going to matter. If your model is powerful enough or has potential dual-use applications, some countries might restrict who can access it. Right now, that's informal. Soon it might be codified in international agreements. For those using AI at work, pay attention to where your AI tools come from. If a tool you're using hasn't been tested to international standards, your organization might face compliance issues down the line. That's not just a tech problem, it's a legal one. The key thing to understand is that the gap between capability and safety is closing. That's actually good. It means AI is becoming more reliable and trustworthy, which is what everyone wants. But it means the Wild West days are over. So here's what the United Nations dialogue on AI governance actually means for you. The era of AI developing with almost no international oversight is ending. That's not a bad thing. It means AI is going to be safer, more transparent, and more trustworthy. It also means if you're building with AI or using it at work, you need to think about governance and compliance. Don't wait for regulations before you start thinking about this. Get familiar with safety testing frameworks now. Understand what transparency means in your industry. Know where your AI tools come from and whether they've been vetted. The AI companies that thrive will be the ones proactive about safety and transparency. They'll build trust with regulators and users by moving toward these standards on their own. On the geopolitical side, watch this dialogue closely. What comes out will shape how AI gets developed, deployed, and exported over the next decade. If the United Nations creates standards that countries actually follow, it's a massive deal. If they can't find common ground, you'll see countries get aggressive about export controls, which fragments the ecosystem. Either way, the fact that the United Nations is doing this signals that binding international regulation is here. Follow for daily AI news.